Hey there! Good morning, afternoon, and evening, everyone, and welcome back to the Genshin Impact character review series. We take each character from the game, and I give my opinions on them, so I basically review them. We do some artifact and weapon suggestions, and it's all cool! So then, today's character is most likely one character that you have seen everywhere being talked about. He's the secret Pyro Archon of the game. It is Bennet. And, I mean, if I'm honest, there's not much to say about Bennet, so this might be a bit of a more shorter video, but hey. Yeah, I mean, Bennet is just nuts, and first, opinions, he's just a busted support that has everything, and he can even work as a, weird DPS in his own way. And yeah, I mean, he's just, as said, that secret Pyro Archon, although I must say, in my heart, Xingqiu is a better support than Bennet. So then, let's get into Bennet's kit, because you'll easily see why he's insane. So, Bennet has normal attacks. Nobody uses them. Bennett's normal attack cycle is just normal attacks, and his charge attack is the same as every other sword user. It's the multiple slashes. Trust me, nobody uses them. Except on the main DPS, you can use them here and there, but the main DPS actually works differently. We'll talk about that. Let's move on to Bennett's skill then immediately. So Bennett's skill has multiple levels. Level 1 is when you just tap it. Bennet just does a short pyro slice, let's say, deals an okay amount of damage, generates a good amount of particles, has a very low cooldown. But you can also hold down the skill. If you do that, Bennet will do his spiral thing and then launch into the air and then slam back down, and that slamming back down for some reason knocks him back. It's sort of like the aspect of his unluckiness that they have in the lore, and if I'm honest, it doesn't tie really well into gameplay. But trust me on this one, nobody, even the DPS role, ever uses this. It is extremely useless, even on early game, I must say. Just spam the skill, just tap it, and that is easily enough. It has low cooldown, and it's just incredibly good pyro application and energy generation. Damage is good. You can vaporize it on a DPS role, and the thing is that both of his talents reduce the cooldown of the skill, whether you're in the ultimate or not. So yeah, both of his talents just reduce the cooldown of this skill, and you just spam it. On a sort of DPS build, you use the skill, then with someone like Xingqiu most likely, you do your attacks, sword, the rain swords fall down, Hydro, E again. It's extremely good. But yeah, nobody uses the hold skill. Even with the talent that says that he doesn't get launched back if you're in his ultimate, if you do that hold skill, nobody does that. The hold duration and the damage doesn't it doesn't compare to just spamming the E. So yeah, good skill, spammable as hell, good particle generation is good. Then we move on to the ultimate, and this is the busted part. This, unfortunately, is the biggest problem for Bennet. So Bennet slams the ground and he creates his circle of power, let's say. If you're standing within this circle, your character gets healed based on Bennett's max HP. And when you're above 70% health, your characters gain an attack buff based on Bennett's base attack. Another thing to mention about Bennett's burst is that it infuses your characters with pyro while they're standing on it. It does have its advantages and disadvantages. Advantage is that it can actually cleanse debuffs like slowing water and some other stuff. So it's cool. The disadvantage, which can happen many times, is that because you're infused with pyro, it means that enemies' attacks can, do reactions on you. So they can vape for extra damage, they can melt for extra damage, you can get overloaded for extra damage. So yeah, I mean, you can set yourself on fire if there's a Dendrosamatral, so it is something. I guess it does play into Bennett's unluckiness, so everything does have its pros and cons. Again, it's not a problem most of the time, but there will be a few times where you literally get nuked by enemies. And especially with a freaking bastard Magu Kenki on the Abyss, on the freaking last 3 Abysses. His attacks are Cryo and Anemo, which means that if you're standing inside of Bennett's ultimate, you get melt and also you get swirled. And he can one-shot you easily. So there is a few times where you need to be careful with Bennett's burst. And also, he does have a limitation to heal, where it heals up to 70%, but the way it works is that it checks if your HP is above 70%. So if you're at 69, nice, and you heal, you are gonna heal above 70% of your HP. So buffing Bennett's healing can help bypass that 70% rule. So it's pretty cool. So yeah, it's busted. It's just busted. And if you have Bennet C on his first constellation, which, yeah, I don't mention constellations that much in this game, in this series, but Bennet C1 is just the most busted thing ever. Bennet C0 is extremely powerful. Bennet at C1 is the Pyro Archon himself, the Pyro support Archon himself. His C1 removes the limit of that 70% that I said. So at whatever HP percentage, you will get the attack buff. Plus, it adds a bit more of a ratio to his base attack. So more attack bonus. And that's busted. Like, coupled with the energy generation he gets from spamming his E, and the burst has like a 60 energy cost, it's busted. Give him an energy recharge Sands, and you're done. At around like, I think 170 to 200 plus energy recharge, you can easily use 1 E to 2 E's and have your burst back up. Usually Bennet is also coupled with like another Pyro character because of the Pyro Resonance, which adds more attack to your Pyro carry. So as your Pyro carry is generating particles for themselves, Bennet also gains those extra energy particles because they are Pyro as well. So he gains his burst even quicker, and that's where you need only 1 E to gain your burst back. And that's busted. That's extremely good. And that's Bennet. Literally, it's only the ult and the very low cooldown on the E, and that makes him extremely good. That attack buff can easily work on a main DPS Bennet and of course all of his supporting capabilities. And as for team comps, he fits everywhere. Everywhere, except for Hu Tao. The only character is Hu Tao. And even then, you can actually use Bennet with a Hu Tao. Only on C1. As for artifacts, Noblesse. Just Noblesse. Well, Noblesse for the support. The extra elemental burst damage on the 2 set is fine. I mean, Bennet does actually spam his burst, and the only ability you will ever level up if you're using him as a full support is the ult. So, extra burst damage is cool. And then the 4-piece bonus gives more attack. So, Pyro Resonance attack bonus, Bennet's attack bonus from the ultimate, plus Noblesse. You just reach insane amounts of attack. Here we are. It's just extreme synergy, and it makes Bennet extremely powerful. As for main DPS Bennet, Crimson Witch, of course. Extra pyro damage, the extra pyro damage you gain from the 4-piece set. But the 4-piece set was, of course, made for Diluc because he can spam his elemental skill 3 times. Well, Bennet also has a very low cooldown skill, so he actually gains a lot of pyro. He can easily use the pyro damage bonus of the 4-piece set, plus extra vaporize damage, which is used because of course you're playing Bennet with Xingqiu, you're vaporizing. And yeah, and before we get into weapons, I want to talk about the C6. If you've been on a discussion about Genshin Impact, specifically Bennet, every single person on the earth will mention his 6th constellation. Now, it's a constellation that's of course hard to get. To get a C6 Bennet is lucky, of course. You can roll on character banners that have Bennet on them, which to be honest, there haven't been that many. And not get Bennet, of course. I did, and I didn't get Bennet. The Kazuha banner had Bennet, rolled 30 wishes, no Bennet. Then Ayaka banner comes out, 10 wishes into the standard banner, I got Bennet. That's the bullshit of gacha. But yes, like, you can just go on very much without any Bennet constellations or any Bennet. But yeah, if you reach the point of Bennet C6, comes the absolute dilemma of, do I enable it? In my honest opinion, I think that Bennet's constellation, the C6, is too much hated. Okay, I think we're all like over-hating on the thing. If you sit down and carefully read it, you'll see that, okay, it actually doesn't damage Bennet all that much. So the thing is that his 6th constellation, should have it on screen, whenever you use your burst, anybody standing inside the burst area, sword, claymore, and polearm users, they gain a pyro infusion, exactly like Chongyun, and they also gain 15% pyro damage bonus. Now then, Bennet goes, as said, hand in hand with pyro carries, so his team compositions with pyro carries are not broken at all. Extra pyro damage on your pyro carry, and full-on pyro infusion. So someone like Diluc, who does depend a lot in constantly having a pyro infusion on his weapon, loves it. Hu Tao not so much. She has her own reasons that she doesn't want to get healed, so the pyro infusion just, you can't get it. Yoimiya, she doesn't get the infusion, but the extra pyro damage is nice. Yanfei as well, pyro infusion is nice. Pyro damage increase is nice. Klee, pyro damage is nice. And every other single freaking pyro damage, pyro character works like that. The whole thing about ruining his team comps, you then have to ask yourself, does the infusion get overridden? So if you stack infusions, they override themselves. They override each other. Bennet actually has the top priority. That C6 is actually sitting at the top of infusion priority, so most of the infusions that can be overridden will be overridden. That mostly happens on someone like Keqing, and I think Ayaka, but most others like Noel, Xiao, Hu Tao, those cannot be overridden. I mean, Hu Tao is already pyro. But like if you place a Chongyun field and the Bennet field, the Bennet field will actually overlap the Chongyun field, although actually they sort of interchange between one another. I've seen that happen. But still, yes, it limits many of Bennet's compositions. So see for yourself. Do you have a pyro carry and Bennet is always hugging them? Well, there's no reason to not use his C6. For other team compositions, they usually just use Bennet as an attack buff, and they don't care about the pyro infusion because they have their own ways of dealing damage. So, yeah, like, you put Bennet on Xiao. Like, Xiao's infusion on his plunge attacks cannot be overridden, so where's the problem in using C6, right? I mean, he won't benefit for the pyro damage infusion, but at least you won't be bothered by an exclamation mark that you have a constellation to apply. And yeah, Like, that's mostly, like, again, Bennet goes on every single composition, but most of the time, those compositions deal their own type of damage, so being pyro-infused doesn't matter. But again, it does hurt them a bit. See for your own self what parties you're using. Like, if you're using, let's say, a Eula with Bennet, you can't use Bennet with the Pyro Infusion. If you're using a physical Kaching, if you're using someone else, Razor, you just can't use them, of course, sure. But still, in my opinion though, what can be changed to make this constellation better? I don't exactly agree on the toggling of constellations. Just make it like Chongyun's field, where when a character enters the field, they are infused for a certain period of time, and after that certain period of time, the infusion goes away. So, pyro carries that like the infusion still keep it, and then other characters that don't like the infusion will most likely end with a bit of a DPS loss, but it still won't hurt them completely. Right. So, yeah. I mean, that's mostly it really for that C6, which is, again, has ended to be very controversial, and it's mostly the only reason why people are asking for a constellation toggle, which, again, I don't agree. I think that, if I'm honest, my idea is just much better. But yes, let's then get into weapons. So Bennet's weapons split into two categories: highest base attack and those that don't have the highest base attack. So one by one. The Black Cliff Longsword. If you're not using your Black Cliff on a DPS like Ayaka, Kaching, or anyone, I guess give it on Bennet. 44 base attack is very good. Favonius Sword, one of Bennet's staples. Now, it actually has a very low base attack, 41, but the energy recharge it gives can compensate for some bad artifact rolls, or it also allows you to use him more a bit in a non-pyro carry, because, as said, it is that synergy that pyro carries will generate pyro energy and give a lot of energy to Bennet himself. With a non-pyro carry, that doesn't happen, so the Favonius Sword can help you keep a basically 100% uptime on Bennet's ultimate. It's pretty good, and 41 isn't the worst base attack. With C1 it also becomes much better. Iron Sting. It's cool. Once again, you only care about the base attack, and the effect is lost on Bennet. The Elemental Mastery is also lost on Bennet. I guess you can sort of use it as a DPS Bennet. I mean, sure. You are proccing Vaporize quite a lot, so hey, the Elemental Mastery isn't all that bad. Lion's Roar, 42 base attack. It's fine. It gives an attack percent. Bennet doesn't really use it. I guess if you're using a, again, DPS Bennet, the effect is also kind of cool on DPS Bennet. It increases damage against opponents affected by Pyro. But the thing is, you're hitting opponents affected by Hydro because you want to Vaporize. So if you have Lion's Roar and you're using main DPS Bennet with Xingqiu, specifically, because he's also Sword user, give Lion's Roar to Xingqiu, he will deal more damage because he's hitting Pyro-affected enemies through Bennet, and give something else to Bennet. Prototype Rancor, it's okay on Bennet. 44 base attack, that's actually very high, so good attack up, though I would guess people use the Favonius Sword more. It's better to have the energy recharge over the base attack sometimes. And the effect, like, it gives physical damage, which Bennet never attacks, even on, like, the thingy, even on main DPS Bennet. And the effect, like, with the normal and charge attack stacks, it's like, no. Sacrificial Sword, not for Bennet, give it to Xingqiu. Better run with a Favonius Sword. Bennet's E, as said, has a very, very low cooldown, especially while your ultimate is active. So there's no reason to reset the cooldown of it. Ally Flash, perfectly usable. The highest base attack out of all the 4 stars, 45, that's more than a single 5-star weapon. So just for the base attack, the huge amount of base attack you get from Ally Flash, I would easily use it over a Favonius Sword, over basically everything else. It gets a small amount of Elemental Mastery, doesn't really matter. Although the effect isn't that worse. Increases all damage done by 12% on R1. If you take damage, that effect is disabled. As said, you do spam Bennet's E and ultimate a lot, so that extra bit of damage is helpful, coupled with the insane base attack, works very well on a support Bennet. The Black Sword, I won't recommend it actually. Yes, 42 base attack, but it gives crit rate, and its effect is about normal and charged attacks. Even on a main DPS Bennet, you don't use normal and charged attacks, and the base attack is too low. I would even use a Favonius Sword more, because even with the lower base attack. The Flute, same base attack as Lion's Roar, it also gives attack percent, so it's not that useful. The effect is lost basically on Bennet. Just use it as a base attack thingy if you don't have a Favonius Sword, if you don't have the prototype billets for a prototype ranker, mayhaps, you can use it, it's okay with the base attack. Festering Desire isn't that bad. I would, I guess, recommend it a bit over the Favonius Sword. With the Favonius Sword, there are many instances where you over energy recharge, basically. So you gain more energy than you should. And that goes to waste. With Festering Desire, you gain more base attack than Favonius Sword, 42. It gives a very good amount of energy recharge. And the effect increases skill damage and skill crit rate. As said, you spam your skill a lot with Bennet, so that extra damage adds up. Of course, though, Festering Desire is locked behind playing before, playing at Christmas of 2020 because of the Albedo event, so not everybody has it. That's perfectly fine. Amenoma Kageuchi. It's fine. As the full free-to-play, thing, it's a split between it and Prototype Ranker. Prototype Ranker has much more base attack, 44 versus 41, which really goes a long way. I mean, it's a lot for Bennet. The thing is, though, that Amenoma has the effect where you use your skill, you gain these stacks, and when you use your burst, you gain energy back based on the stacks consumed. And that is very, very good for Bennet. You spam your skill, so you gain the stacks. You spam your burst, you gain the energy back. It is a pseudo Favonius Sword. So if you don't have a high refinement Favonius Sword or any Favonius Sword at all, you have the billets, you like Amenoma, you can easily use it on Bennet. Sure, the low base attack is a thing, but the effect, I think, does make up for it very nicely. The extra attack percent that it gives, it's negligible for Bennet. I wouldn't actually recommend Amenoma for main DPS Bennet, perhaps from the craftables. Main DPS Bennet, I would go for Iron Sting, believe it or not. If you want, and I think there are ways to gain free prototype rankers, maybe in quests or something, I don't remember exactly. If you want the base attack only, easily use it. If you have enough energy recharge plus a pyro carry, you can easily go with prototype ranker and only care about the base attack. So then, we move on to 5 stars. Aquila Favonia, a staple on Bennet's, has the highest base attack out of all the 5 stars alongside Miss Splitter. We'll talk about it later. Aquila Favonia is also available through the standard banner and losing your pity on the weapons banner, which I hope doesn't happen to you. And that's basically it. It gives physical damage, which is extremely useless on Bennet, as we said with the prototype. It gives 20% attack, which is nice, I guess. Your burst any will deal a bit more damage. The effect, though, where if you get hit, you regenerate HP, is actually kind of nice. Sometimes when you bring Bennet out on the field, he might get damaged by an attack. And the Aquila Favonia will help heal you back. Sometimes even, you can burst with Bennet at low HP, and he won't... the ticks that happen with his ultimate might not hit him. So maybe you get hit by a low damage attack from an enemy, Aquila Favonia triggers, and you gain some health back to like, keep up for that small amount of time, and then the healing tick happens from your ultimate, and you gain, you're good. But Aquila Favonia is mostly picked because of its base attack. That's all. Skyward Blade. This is sort of Bennett's best in slot. It gives the best of both worlds. 46 base attack, a bit lower than Aquila Favonia, but still good enough. And it gives a lot of energy recharge back. So it's basically a better Favonius sword. Its effect is basically useless on a support Bennet, because for some reason they made the effect more DPS-like. It gives you a bit of crit rate, and when you use your burst, you gain a bit of extra movement speed, attack speed, and your normal and charge attacks deal extra damage. As said, Bennet doesn't... the movement speed, I guess, can be a bit useful, but the normal and charge attack damage and attack speed don't go on Bennet. But the base attack is very, very good. The energy recharge is extremely good, so that's fine. Summit Shaper. Good base attack, same as Skyward Blade with 46, but it doesn't have any other supporting element to it. For DPS Bennet, for sure, if you have a shielder, because Summit Shaper also has this limitation. It needs a shielder to really shine. But because of the base attack, it's very, very good. If you care about Bennett's base attack only and you're fine with energy generation, pick it up. Jade Cutter. If you have ally flash, use ally flash for the base attack. If you want, you can easily use Jade Cutter. Much more base attack than the Favonius sword, though it doesn't have, it doesn't have the energy recharge. And it's more, DPS oriented. It has its cheat crit rate, which reaches 50% crit rate. It does increase HP, actually. So Bennett's ultimate healing does scale off of HP, so I guess it's a nice extra boost to your healing. And the effect does give you a bit more attack based on your HP. And forgot to say this. So for support the Bennet, you usually run something like an energy recharge sands, most likely an attack or HP goblet, and then also like HP circlet. You don't need anything else, if I'm honest. For damage Bennet, it's the classic attack, pyro damage, crit rate, crit damage, right? With something like the Skyward Blade, you can run an HP sands instead of, let's say, attack sands, or instead of energy recharge sands. Same with Favonius sword. For more healing, basically, because you already have enough energy recharge through your weapons. For something like Summit Shaper, Aquila Favonia, or the Jade Cutter, running an energy recharge sands, which gives you around 50%, is most likely mandatory in order to keep up Bennett's ultimate, always on the field. So yeah, Jade Cutter, good enough with its base attack. Just use it if you don't want to use anything else, and you don't have I guess you haven't given a Jade Cutter to your DPS yet. Freedom Sworn. Now, I haven't actually really thought about Freedom Sworn on Bennet. Now, if you have Freedom Sworn and somehow you don't have something like Kazuha, so most likely Freedom Sworn came from Arena rerun, I would guess. So, Freedom Sworn. It has good base attack, 46 like Summit Shaper and the Skyward Blade. It gives a good amount of Elemental Mastery, which doesn't really go in Bennet. Maybe DPS Bennet can use it. And as for the effect, number one, it's a whole paragraph. But in short, whenever you trigger reactions, which a Bennet can easily do in a team, easily can proc reactions with his E, you gain a Sigil of Rebellion. And if you possess 2 of them, they will be consumed, and your party members will gain extra normal charged and plunging attack damage and extra attack %. And this effect can be triggered every 20 seconds. An extremely good weapon, I would say, for Bennet. Is it better than the Skyward Blade? If you have enough energy recharge, then very much. It is a full-on support Bennet weapon that buffs your carries even more with that Sigil of Rebellion stacking thing. So it's good to use. Though I would guess there perhaps are some other characters that can use it. you can perhaps slap it on a Xingqiu more than a Bennet, but it's still good on Bennet. If you have it and you don't have anything else and you're good on energy recharge, fucking run it. It's gonna be good. But it's limited compared to something like Aquila Favonia, of course, and the Jade Cutter. Mistsplitter Reforged is also fine. You only mostly use it for its base attack. Mistsplitter Reforged, which came with the Ayaka banner, we'll see when it reruns. 48 base attack, so max base attack that you can get, so the maximum amount that Bennet can buff your team. It gives a good amount of crit damage, but it doesn't really matter on a non-main DPS Bennet. Main DPS Bennet loves it, and the effect is also very good on main DPS Bennet. For support, it's fine, I guess you're dealing... Look, compared to Aquila Favonia, it's better overall. But it's like it's not that substantial. So Mistsplitter Reforged gives you extra elemental damage bonus passively, and then when your normal attacks deal elemental damage, which Bennet can't exactly do unless he has C6, you gain a stack if you use your elemental burst, and if your energy is less than 100%, you gain stacks. So most likely with Bennet before C6, you'll be having 2 stacks, which gives you 16%, so that's around 28% elemental damage bonus. That's fine on a support Bennet, that's fine on a that's really good on a main DPS Bennet. For support Bennet, I guess it's a little bit more pyro damage from your E and maybe ult, but you're mostly using it for the base attack. And that's it for Bennet's weapons. As said, it splits into, does it have good base attack, and is the effect helpful with keeping my ultimate up, or does it do good damage for main DPS Bennet? And yeah, so it is a bit of a fight. I myself right now use a Favonius Sword, although I also use a Energy Recharge Sands, which means that I go very much overboard with Energy Recharge. But I don't have any weapons really that have a really good base attack to give to Bennet, so he sits with the Favonius Sword. Also, I mean, using Bennet with a Favonius Sword means you can also battery your Pyro DPS if they need their ultimate, so you can still use Favonius Sword even with the low base attack. But once you get something like an Aquila Favonia and you don't have a physical damage bonus DPS, slap it onto Bennet. Get a Skyward Blade, slap it onto Bennet. Get a Jade Cutter, give it to your DPS, but if you want, give it to your Bennet. And yeah, again, it's the fight between base attack and the effects, and many weapons can be useful for both of Bennet's roles, main DPS or support. I know I have been saying main DPS Bennet very chill, but trust me, he can really work as a main DPS. Pyro DPS with Vaporizing, with Mona and Xingqiu. Seriously. But that is it for Bennet. Actually, it didn't end up being that shorter than other characters, but, Bennet is so well known amongst the Genshin Impact community that I guess I thought it would have been short. But nevertheless, in conclusion then, Bennet is extremely powerful. He is, of course, the number one recommended support to use, but his gameplay as a support is very stale. You switch, you E, you ult, you E. That's all you do. You do not care about his damage much. You just care about the damage boost. Listen to me. If you are a person that sort of hates Bennet's gameplay as a support, perhaps you might find some fun playing Bennet as a DPS. Seriously, try it out. You might just be like, hey, it was some nice 10 minutes trying Bennet as a main DPS, right, instead of support. But if you hate this character, which to be honest, a lot do me as well, it can be a pain to use him. But as always, with guides like this one, nobody forces you to play a character. Nobody forces you to play a character in a specific way. You do you. Bennet is a somewhat design problem but I think he's fine. He's broken in Genshin, but the reason he's broken in Genshin is because of Genshin's massive DPS checks. And since Bennet is the only support that can directly influence a character's DPS that well, because now Kojo-Sara can do it, but Bennet's is way easier to play. Way easier to play and way easier to use and itemize, right? He just becomes so top tier. That's the thing. And I mean, yeah, that's the biggest problem you will. That's the problem with Bennet. I don't necessarily think he's a design problem. They also did try to bring in his lore to his abilities. Like, as said, his hold E skill launches him backwards, or his burst doesn't heal you above 70%. You know, sort of like this unlucky-ish thing. Like, he heals you, but he doesn't heal you to full because he's unlucky, and it's like, meh. But if he could heal you to full, he would have been too busted, actually. So, it's fine. And, yeah. That's it. Next up, I don't know. It's either Ningyan or Fischl, so get ready, boys. And girls. See you there.